Hi, and welcome back to Field Service Leaders Podcast, where we explore the intersection between technology, innovation, and workforce development. I'm your host, Alistair Clifford Jones, and today we're delving into transformation of the field and service industry and how they can enhance employee engagement. Joining us is Debbie Vaughn. She's a seasoned professional, starting off her career in sales and then moving into operations. She has a wealth of experience in terms of implementing technology, and I think she's at the forefront of employee engagement. In this episode, we'll be discussing some of the challenges, how she got to where she is in her career, and most importantly, how she really believes employee engagement is the recipe for success, and also making sure that customers come first. So, Debbie, it would be great if you give us a brief introduction into your career and how you got into service management.
Great, thank you. First of all, thank you for having me today. Honored to be here. So I have kind of an interesting path I took because I originally, in the Wayback Machine, started out in health and wellness and worked in that field for several years until I moved and it was time for a transition. And I ended up in sales. Never thinking I would be in sales, though people had told me for years you should work in sales, and I was like, no. Anyway, so I ended up getting recruited at a job fair, of course, because you move and you have to go find work, and entered the world of IT and technology sales. Everything from mice to mainframe for a good 7-8 years was quite successful in it, but I always knew that I wanted to do something more. So I took a leap and I ended up leaving for a different sales role that definitely was not the right move. But we do that in our career paths. It's how we get to where we are. So along the way, I ended up making a transition to, I was a named account manager. So I was still kind of in the sales customer success realm. And one of the things that always nagged at me as a sales rep was I was always very interested in the why and the how behind, because I wanted to be able to have a more intelligent conversation with my customer, which drove my sales leaders nuts, by the way. But I just always knew I kind of had this knack for it or something biting at me. Well, in the job where I was a named account manager, we ended up reinventing the way we were providing service to our customers. At the time, we were quite legacy. We serviced like old school phone systems. So it was legacy maintenance. So we were not very mature in our processes because we really didn't need to be. It was very reactive, break fix work. But along came a huge customer who demanded us rolling into more of an ITIL based model. And so we needed to reinvent how we delivered service. So through this, I ended up piloting our very first service desk. And I took my little team and we built out a little mini service desk and we serviced my customers through this model with engineers on the desk and et cetera, et cetera. Wildly successful. Customers loved it. Definitely thought we built it in a way that could be scalable. Meanwhile, we were undergoing some platform changes, like a lot of big lifts all at the same time, which in the rewind machine, I think everybody involved regrets the way we went about this and what we did. But it's how I got to where I am. So I take this little pilot and I give it to my leaders, and they do literally nothing that I piloted. They completely flipped the bit. Somebody went in a room with a whiteboard, which is what happens, and creates some perfect model and then rolls it out into execution, and it fails the second it rolls out. And this is at the same time as rolling out a brand new ITSM.
Mm-hmm.
Forklift upgrade,
Yeah.
all on the same day. So I lose my mind because I feel like they threw my baby out with the bathwater and I'm not okay with this. And I'm kind of a stompy individual. And I storm right into leadership's office, like, what have you done? And so I ended up doing double duty for about 3 weeks where I went and I ran a service desk and I did my day job. Through that, I managed to create my next role of managing service delivery for this company. And I created the service delivery lead role during that time. As a matter of fact, my first SDL started on my first day of managing the service desks, managing delivery. Oh, I built this airplane so in flight, like we were up in the air and going, but it is how it launched me into my career. So from there, I actually was promoted a few times and ended up being the executive director of service operations, overseeing all day 2 support everything. So it really just organically grew, but it started from really me not accepting the way that things were done on behalf of not only my customers, but also my peers. And the good news is I worked for a company who did listen, and when they made a mistake, they owned it and they pivoted fast. I wish more companies would do that. I don't think that that's a common trend, but this wasn't a huge, massive, it was privately owned, about 500 employees. It was very easy to be like, okay, we screwed up. Our customers mean a lot, let's pivot. So building a very successful ITIL-based service desk model, and that is what really launched me into service delivery and operations career. So
Yeah,
that's how.
that's interesting. Often people we talk to in operations started off in operations as a engineer somewhere along the line and gradually got promoted. But I think having that sales experience is probably hugely important.
I always tell people that I'm sales driven, operationally minded. So I do believe it does give you a unique skill set because I'm always thinking about the commercial side or the impact to sales as we make our moves, right? Like
Yeah.
it is something that has never been lost on me. And it also gives me the ability to sell without selling per se to our customers in an operational setting without them having the natural shield of, oh, she's just trying to sell me. No, I'm
Hmm.
not. It is not in my best interest to sell you. I have to literally execute on what I tell you. And so it is not in my best interest to make anything up for you or to sell you something that I can't do. I'm
Yeah.
just, but I know, you know what I mean, how to kind of give the massage to it that it makes them feel comfortable without over promising.
Mm.
I do just think it brings a bit of a unique skill set to the table, which I'm proud of, really, because I think that it could set the way I operate apart when it comes
Mhm.
to how I treat my teams and how we execute in a delivery realm.
So, have there been any mentors or anyone along the line that you thought that, that's actually really had a big impact and probably helped you to be where you are today?
Um, there is one primary person who was at the same company that I got into delivery. She still is. I mean, we don't work together anymore, but she is still somebody that I would lean on and reach out to spitball ideas off. But what I would say is she challenged me over the years to think differently, to step out, of the tunnel mindset and from above and look down and look at the full landscape. And I give her a lot of credit for helping develop me into really the leader that I am today. I think
Hmm.
I'm probably a little more practical when it comes to like the actual operational side of things, but she was a phenomenal leader and she taught me how to mentor people below me. We had a big promotion culture, and so it was, figuring out people's makeup, what they wanted to be when they grow up, how to guide and develop and get them into, their next best thing and be that thoughtful leader while still holding the operational line. So yeah, she's pivotal in my career path. I think it's been diluted. And it needs to be more intentional now to be able to surround yourself with people who build you up and make you better, and also be able to kind of naturally develop that
Hmm.
partnership, that relationship. And I only say that because of how much remote and video there is today versus in person. A lot of my mentorship was purely by accident, purely because I was there. Do
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying? Like I got to overhear things, I got to be a part of things, I got to watch, um, how my leaders handled things, how they solved problems. When you aren't together, how do you do that? So like my boss right now is probably in a meeting somewhere having a chat about solving some sort of strategic company problem. In the old in-person world, you could potentially either end up being in that meeting, you could be somehow a part of things like because you were there. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like it's kind of weird, but it happens by proxy. Now it doesn't. It has to be very intentional. Like,
Yeah.
hey, I want in on this. Hey, can you include me in this? And then it's really easy to forget
Yeah.
people and leave them on an island. Oh crap, I should have invited them to this. And the days of come here, come into this room are over, or not over, but they're lessened. And Now it's like, oh, well, I'll just catch them up later because I can't just throw them this invite and pull them into the room. I just think it's changed.
Do you think it's harder to bring people into a Teams or Zoom meeting than it would have been? I
Hmm.
mean, just sort of, you could always bring young people into meetings, couldn't you? And people knew that their role was not necessarily to get involved, but in Teams, it's slightly different, isn't it?
And people can, and I don't think this is intentional when I use this term, but I think people can hide.
Yeah.
If they don't want to be pulled in, they won't. Oh no, I can't. Whereas if you're sitting at your desk or a cubicle or what have you, and your boss does a drive-by and hey, can you jump into this conference room? Or I mean, it does still happen. I get pulled into meetings on Teams often enough. I just think that it's just not quite the same.
So moving on a bit to technology and sort of innovation in the field, because you've obviously got quite a technology background. So really interested in your thoughts in terms of if there's one technology at the moment that you think's really important for field service, what would it be?
I would say the implementation of some AI practice over the top your resourcing tool, like whatever platform you're using, because they lack, right? I mean, definitely you've got a mapping program. You've got all this old school technology built into these ITSMs that happen to have a resource plugin. That's usually how it works.
Hmm.
And it's people want to trust it, but they can't necessarily trust it because they're not as robust or they don't apply the actual virtual intelligence that I'm excited for. I'm excited to see what AI can do to actually bring a little bit of human element or human thought process to it in regard to when it spits out an optimized schedule or an optimized route or what have you. I'm excited for that, but I will say I am a firm believer that it should be treated as a tool and not a replacement, and that it should be an optimization, not like thinking that it's going to, oh, you don't need dispatchers anymore. Oh, you don't need customer support center anymore. I'm a little scared the pendulum will swing a little bit on one side, and then I think we'll all learn our lessons and come back to the middle. But I am a little concerned that the over usage of technology and tools is going to try to be a replacement for some of that human intervention. And I'm not sure how that's going to work out because you're still dealing with an actual body on the other end of this game of Tetris
Yeah.
that the computer is playing, for lack of better terms.
Yeah, no, it's exactly that, I think. And it is interesting. AI means so many different things to different people. I mean, it's almost one of those. I'm thinking of sort of, all these terms we've had in the past, usually invented by consultants to mean various things, and then
Yeah.
they end up. So, I mean, for you, what would AI mean?
Like for example, let's say you put in this overlay, because it has to be an overlay because I shouldn't say it has to. I should not talk in definites like that. But most companies have made a very large investment into the platforms they're running on. And so, in order to be able to apply, let's say, AI, I'm hoping that it's an actual overlay to the platform because otherwise, it's going to be really difficult. You're going to have to go through another forklift. You're going to have to justify another software platform, what have you. But I think a lot of the companies out there are realizing this and they're coming up with like a plugin or a module that applies to their base product.
Hmm.
But something like, okay, where I live in Washington State. There is a huge mountain range in between the west side of the state and the east side of the state. I dealt with a team back in the day when they were dispatching for Washington, and the mapping program would pull up a technician on the west side of the state because it was 45 miles. And they would say, okay, dispatch them to the east side of the state. Well, nowhere in that program is going to tell you that this giant mountain range exists and that in February, odds are it's either going to potentially be closed because of avalanche or weather, and or that you have to apply X amount of hours buffer or a backup plan or what have you because it's mountain range.
Hmm.
I'm curious to see if some of these more advanced AI technologies say there's a mountain range in the middle, apply an extra 3 hours or what have you. Because if it's
Yeah.
really like replacing a human critically thinking about the region they're actually sending their people into, I'm curious how much that will get applied. Or LA, are they going to account for 3 hours of traffic
Yeah.
when you send your technician 20 miles down the road?
Yeah.
I'm excited to see how that transforms.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it will ever get to that level of knowledge of like applying human knowledge. I don't know though, right?
Yeah.
Like it's getting pretty freaking smart.
Well, I remember in the start of my career, we ran a program to work out where the optimum place for a warehouse should be. And
Mhm.
we waited I think the program ran for about 4 days. And the answer came out, and it was halfway between London and Paris, right in the middle of the English Channel. Someone had forgotten to put country boundaries or whatever in the filtering system.
Well, the things are still by humans on the end, okay? Like on the
Yeah,
back end, it still has some sort of human
yeah,
touch. It's only going to be as good as the data it was given to start to create its program.
yeah. Interesting. I could talk about that all the time, actually, because I think it's a fascinating subject. In terms of implementing new technology that you've done in the past, have there been any things that have failed
Well,
or
I
not
told
been successful? Yes. Anything else?
Yeah, there's a lot of, I don't know the word to use, belief out there that when you upgrade a platform or you change a platform, you go to industry standard platform, right? Convince your leaders we need to go from Sharewell to ServiceNow. And you paint this golden picture because that's what you've been sold and that's what all your customers are using. I mean, none of them are perfect, and none of those platforms do all of the things we needed to do in the field service industry eloquently. They just don't.
Hmm.
And they all require customization. So I think one of the biggest failures I've seen is people believing that out of the box is going to solve their customer problems or fit their business model. And then not being transparent with leadership in what they really are going to need to make the platform successful. That's probably the number one thing I've seen where, again, people not in the trenches are making the decisions on behalf of the business and not really understanding what we do and how we do it. And so they take a look at this structure of a platform. No, it has a reporting and analytics module. No, it has a resourcing. It has this. It has everything you need. We don't need anything more. It's going to work perfectly out of the box. And then they go sell it to senior leadership who has X amount of dollars in mind. And then when reality comes and your delivery people are telling you, no, it doesn't actually have this level of reporting. No, it doesn't actually go to external resources. It's meant for internal resourcing, not field resources. I don't have the ability to put my engineer. We need this, we need that. And then they're like, so then you end up having to duct tape and bubblegum this platform together to get it to do what you actually need it to.
Hmm.
And it takes years of customization and development to get it to where you need it to be if you ever get there.
Hmm.
And or if you don't make another change in
Yeah,
there and you start over. So
yeah.
I don't think I've ever had like a quote unquote bad platform. I've definitely had less than optimals. I've had platforms that claim they're an ITSM, they're not. You know, I've had those types of situations, but I think it's really been more the implementation that I have had struggles with every time one of them has been implemented.
And how about sort of change management and that journey of implementing technology? Any challenges in that?
Yes. Again, I think a lot of it boils down to knowing the business, actually understanding the use cases, the users, what the current platform does, how we're going to seamlessly transition from one to the other, but also the change management to your people. Like, adoption change management in humans is a very real thing, and it is very overlooked. It's overlooked all the time. My old company actually has a whole practice around it that they sell, and it's a lot of times money companies don't want to spend.
Hmm.
And it just equals a lot of chaos and noise because there was no change management taken care of on the people that are actually going to either be consuming the end result of the product or be the one that are actually trying to do business utilizing it. How to make that perfect? I don't think there's a way to make that perfect other than living in the world of overlap for a while, but after a while, like you don't have a choice in that either. You got to just jump in and rip
Hmm.
it off. But I do think a lot of user acceptance testing, go out into your service desk and sit down and watch them do work.
Yeah.
Like, actually go see what they do and how they use the platform, or how the
Yeah.
technology is used, what it's lacking, you know. And then I think the other big thing is the people want to over automate. Oh, shouldn't we automate that? Shouldn't we automate that? I do believe that process all day should be automated. But let's be realistic. People, process, and tools. Automate any process that makes sense, but don't try to automate people.
Yeah. I
That's where
like that. I like that quote actually. I like that.
the failure comes in, I think.
Yeah.
Try to over automate people, and it just lose their ability to critically think or problem solve. And then when something inevitably, goes wrong, because hi, you're dealing with humans out in the field, or I don't care where they are, in a queue, it doesn't matter. Something's going to go wrong. Nobody knows what to do, because
Yeah.
they can't even trace the process, because it's been so over automated, like they're just stuck. And
Yeah.
I just think that's a failure in being able to take care of your end customer.
Hmm. So before we go into customer service, I'd be interested to follow on in terms of employee engagement, following on from that sort of change management thing. What's your philosophy around developing teams and building effective people?
So this is where I get kind of passionate about overusing, like, I don't want to say overusing technology, but trying to use technology as a replacement instead of an augmentation or an optimization. I'm so concerned that the world of entry to new roles are going to suffer because of product, like utilizing machine learning and AI, because of the critical thinking and the problem solving aspect. How do you learn? How do you grow into a higher level space if you don't get some battle scars? If you don't have to solve a problem on the fly for a priority one incident, like, without having a program try to tell you. I'm just worried that the program's going to tell them what to do, and then they're not actually going to learn what they did. They're not going to learn
Hmm.
how to actually solve the problem. So for me, building and developing those teams, I think it's important to have exposure to tough situations, have exposure to, let them go and try to solve the problem. Be there on the back end. But I was notoriously, though, a tough leader in that regard, where I will throw you into the deep end, and I will let you go a couple inches below water before I throw the life ring.
Hmm.
Because it's how I learned, and it's a big part of what got me to where I am today. You have to be able to trust. But I do think you need to practice those skills, like critical thinking and the ability to solve a problem. So I had a team that I was managing in a different role. And they were overseas, and they were a fantastic team. It was my dispatch team. I didn't get to have a lot of actual connection with them to develop them in the way that I would have liked. But for them, some of it was even cultural. They could follow a process. They would follow a process off a cliff. But the ability to stop and think through what they were applying and the end result, and how to actually pivot and maneuver, was lost. And their leadership didn't know how to teach them how to do that either. I made them put a physical map up of the United States in their office, which is old school, right? But I was like,
Hmm.
you need to understand the regions. You need to learn where you're actually moving humans around, because at the end of the day, again, there's a body attached to what they're trying to do. And, so I had us get into regional dispatch mode and what have you, so that they would actually learn who they were dealing with, where they were sending people, so that then they had an inherent knowledge of like what they were dealing with, or who they were dealing
Hmm.
with, but I believe that when it comes to that type of development, you've got to get in there and get granular and challenge. That's really how I operate. And then I believe in paying attention to, like, who your people really are. Are they a natural leader? Are they a doer? Are they very analytical? Are they like an empath and super soft and want to just take care of people? And then you can help them figure out what they want to be when they grow up and help apply the right next step to them based on their kind of their DNA makeup and of course what they want to do. But like I think that's a responsibility of your leadership to really learn who your people are
Hmm.
and how to get them on their best path. That is something that my mentor taught me a piece of super big importance. Like she was like, okay, so and so wants to get promoted. They think they want to be an SDL. I'm telling you, they're an account manager. Because is either are you data driven? Like, do you want to live in the analytics? Do you want to talk about like hitting SLAs? Or are you concerned about the health and wellness of your customer? You just want them to be happy. You enjoy getting into the account. You don't mind solving invoicing problems. Like what do you like to do? And then you figure out, okay, you're on an operations path or you're not. This was a literal example, right? Like
Yeah.
I think you're going to wither on the vine and delivery. You're going to hate it. You're not going to be able to be black and white. You're not going to be able to wear the black hat. You wear the white hat. Go over here. But you have to take the time to get to know your people well enough to be able to help guide them in that.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
So, I mean, those are just some of my, I guess, my methodologies more than philosophies.
So, how do you measure success in the field?
Data is the best way you can, but one of the biggest data points being voice of the customer. I think voice of the customer and voice of the employee are two of the biggest data points for success in the field. Aside from, of course, your key metrics, mean time to resolve or
Yeah.
repair, all that stuff. We can put all those KPIs on paper and I can go in front of you, Alistair, and say, we are green across the board. We're killing it. And then the voice of the customer comes back and we have an extremely dissatisfied, and at the same time, an employee survey comes back and says we're extremely unsatisfied,
Yeah.
but we're killing it. There are not enough people in this industry who will focus on the other two outliers and to figure out, maybe you even have to go a little yellow in there or something. Maybe you have to have a little risk. But like if you're killing your guys because you're not paying attention to what you're doing to them because you're playing that game of human Tetris that I mentioned earlier, because some automated resourcing program is sending them out into the field on these crazy travel trips with no break, and they're not thinking about the reality of how long things take or traffic delays, and you're whipping them because it's got to be green, and then they get to that site and they deal with that customer and they are just done, and they give a poor experience to that customer because they're not getting treated like a human. They're out on an island, not even understanding the why behind what's happening, the impact they're making in the field, the impact of their job, what the KPIs really are, how they're really being measured. And then they go in there and the customer is either on fire or expecting like a super happy implementation experience, whether it's installation or break fix, I don't care. Like, boom, then the two collide. But on paper, some operations leader comes in and says, but we're green. I don't see the problem, Mr. How many
It's
times have
true.
you seen that? Too many, right? Like
Yeah.
too many. That's where my comment earlier about I'm worried about it being a little over, removing the human touch to it is because you are still messing with bodies.
Yeah.
And those bodies are still engaging with other bodies. And that's at the end of the day, the satisfaction on both ends is what's going to feed your middle KPIs.
It's interesting, actually. The whole combination. It's been a fascinating chat. I think the thing that I'd really be interested to know is what do you think field service will look like in 5 years' time? So much change.
Actually, I think it's really going to look the same. I don't think,
Okay.
I think we're going to go through iterations and evolutions. But at the end of the day, the nature of what we're doing isn't going to change so drastically. You're still going to have somebody out there with a physical board with faces on it, moving them around projects because the human mind still wants to visualize. Even though they have this amazing tool right in front of them, sure, they'll go plug the data into the tool, but you're probably still going to have somebody with a map up putting pins in it where our techs are, because I just don't think we're going to change that much as humans in the way that we need to operate. I do think you're going to see more automation, with the use of like AI driven mapping programs or resourcing programs that are going to give you optimal routes. And then something's going to go wrong on site, a flight's going to get missed, a customer is going to change something, work's going to take longer, and it's still going to be that, oh crap, how are we going to solve this? Who do we have that can go here? Like, I think that I think the nature of that probably isn't really going to change, like the actual core. I think the tools around us will evolve and hopefully we get faster. Like, for example, my hope is that the guys out in the field actually get more connected to the companies that they're representing through the usage of technology because I don't know what it is, but they just get treated like they're on an island. And I've seen it across the board.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. I don't understand how to fully fix it. I've tried to fix it for years. It all depends on the culture of the company you work for, if they believe in fixing that or not. But I do think that technology is going to help them stay more connected to the people that are actually moving them around like game pieces on a board. So I think I'm excited for that. I think that will evolve over the next 5 years, but the nature of what we do, still gonna have to, you're probably gonna see more remote fix, like more remote work. Humans are still humans. They want to see a
Yeah.
body.
Yeah.
They want to know they're being taken care of. They want like that. I don't see that changing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree with that or not, but that's
Yeah, I mean, I think what it is I think the nature of the work has to be done, and 9 times out of 10 it involves an individual going to do something, and we can maybe get them there quicker, we can maybe give them better information, but at the end of the day, it's a job that needs to be done. Someone has to fix something.
well, and using other parts of technology will probably help us get more proactive instead of reactive. I think that's
Yes.
amazing. If we can get into a world of actually being proactive, because we've all been striving for that for my whole career, we've been striving to be more proactive in a
Yeah.
very reactive world. So if applying, Internet of Things or more advanced monitoring tools or what have to give you better predictive failure analysis, if those things continue to evolve, you're still going to need somebody to go take care of the customer.
Yeah.
It's just going to be a different type of visit, right? And
Yeah.
I'll go back to the human part again. They want to feel like they're being taken care of. They're
Yeah.
spending a lot of money. They want to put a face to the name. They will shake your hand, look you in the eye. I just don't think that's gonna. I hope that never goes away. I
Yeah.
think it, but I think it's needed, right? And
Yeah.
so I don't see that fully transforming. I
Okay.
think it'll just look a little different.
So what are your goals for the next 24 months?
24.
It's a long time or a very short time, depending on how you look at it.
Obviously, I'm looking to continue to evolve in my career and continue to grow. I would like to see more transformation. In my current role today, I oversee a lot of different teams and different departments. And one of my big goals is you talked earlier about how I like to develop teams.
Mhm.
I really would like to build out a field team mentorship program that gives our technicians a path of success and a path of growth within the organization. My organization historically has been very siloed, and so it's been very difficult to make those transitions, and it's not been intentional. Again, I think it has to be intentional. Like you have to make a bit of an investment to say, okay, I'm going to send this level 2 desktop tech out on the road with one of my networking guys so he can start to learn the environment of a data center and learn how to do rack replacement or what have you. Like
Yeah.
I really want to see more of that and foster more of that internal growth. That is one of my biggest goals because I have all these segmented teams and I've slowly but surely we've been breaking down the silos and starting to unify and cross collaborate. But I want to get back to that because what do engineers love to do? They love to help and they love to teach. And at the end of the day, I would love to see some of my higher end, more tenured guys leave a legacy by growing up the more entry level working on the desktop side of things and get them evolved into their career so that we continue to
Mhm.
have an evolution of a path of success because the other thing I mentioned earlier is I'm worried about the entry and mid-level jobs. If we start overutilizing technology to replace some of those things because we can because it's easy, how do you have people grow into those higher level roles?
Mhm.
How do you get them there without having that path? So I would like over the next couple of years, that's probably one of my biggest
That's
goals.
I think that's right. I never thought about that actually. If you automate at the bottom of the tree, so to speak, how do you get people to the middle? And it's the bottom that you can potentially automate, but you can't automate the middle.
Right? And
So
what do you do
yeah,
when they get to the top?
yeah,
Like, what are we putting at the top? Somebody didn't go through the school of hard knocks and earn their way up or work their way up.
Yeah.
Like I use those core skills of the critical thinking and the problem solving. If they had tools doing everything for them and they do a really good job because they do a great job managing things and they run the programs and the platforms and so they inevitably get promoted or whatever. Did they really learn the job?
Yeah.
And then they get into the middle where they're making decisions on behalf of the people using those tools.
Yeah. I know.
It's scary, actually.
So anyway, Debbie, I guess it's been fascinating. Just to round up, really. I mean, if you had a magic wand and you could solve one field service challenge, what would it be?
I had a magic wand and I could solve one field service challenge.
The one could solve more than one.
I think it would be the balance of being able to effectively service all of your projects and service all of the work without putting a strain on your people and without potential of tarnishing your brand.
Hmm.
And I say that because right now at my current company, we have a gajillion projects going on. They're all big, they all require field resources, but the problem with us is that our projects are not like month over month, year over year. So it's not like maintenance contracts where you're guaranteed so you can build your team up. So we have to run extremely lean because they're all a couple months in a row of projects. So we find ourselves scaling up to scale down to scale up to scale down. And I think that's a really common problem. But we need to protect our brand. So when it comes to potentially looking to a partner, we're very hesitant to do that because we're very worried about sending somebody else out on behalf of us. In the
Yeah.
meantime, we're murdering our people because they're getting on another plane to another plane to another plane. And we're not stopping and thinking about the impact of the employee. And this goes back to the metrics of employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction. So if I had that wand, I would somehow figure out the way to be able to see the full landscape, make better decisions, and keep that healthy balance. It's something we're striving for every day, but we've not nailed it. That's what I would do. It's a very real
Perfect.
life need of a wand, actually. So if you've got one,
It is. It is. No, I know. Well, Debbie, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you this evening from my perspective, this morning from your perspective, and I look forward to catching up soon.
yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate it.